Okay, we are continuing with our writing exercises from this book, our book on prompts. So this first one was use the following as verbs: racket, snug, green, spoon, boggle, and snake. Carlos snaked all over the course, ever chasing the ball, greening sharply over the net, challenging his agility in the soles of his shoes. Thwack! He racketed the ball, that is, he boggled the ball between the end of the strings in the rim of his instrument. In a great, unpredictable arch, the ball left this unruly impact point and spooned limply back to his opponent, Antonio. Opportunity frothing, Antonio stole forward swiftly and confidently, snugged his racket over his shoulder, traced the descending ball with his eyes, unwound, and smashed the ball squarely back over the net, splitting the air in its wake. Carlos's ankles lurched toward the missile shot, protesting his unpreparedness. In a final act of abuse, Carlos slams on the brakes, skidding desperately toward the ball and readying his racket. A wild swing, and the ball careens uglily into the net. Our next one is simply make the attempt. The meaning of life, you ask? The old sage mumbled, then seemingly to himself, perhaps a wiser one than I would refrain. He drifted off. Orion's heart strummed in anticipatory impatience, and as the sage's mumblings rambled into indistinguishable clues, Orion cast her eyes around the secret club to where she'd been suddenly summoned. Shadowlight danced from candles, and smoking vapor hid faces and figures. From somewhere, a simple keying melody leaked. Whether from enshrouded pianist or hidden record, Orion could not discern. She felt alive in this moment, chain-linked memories flashing through her mind. You summoned me, she suddenly urged. Enough of the riddles. Tell me the meaning of this. Underneath masking hood, the sage's eyes mimed the dance of the candle and fixed Orion in their gaze. Aye, that's it. Ask for what you want. Seize opportunity. On with it, Orion nearly yelled at this shadowy figure, whose only features she could judge were their steadfast eyes. But the sage continued. As for this meeting, a message. You're close. And the sage disappeared with the rest of the club, strangled in a cloud of smoke, and Orion awoke. Puzzle pieces of dream avalanched through her fingers as Orion fumbled to cling to as many as possible. Great satisfaction. A manila envelope containing a summons. The elusive figure. What had she been doing? What are you telling me, Dreamland? She rose, brushed her teeth after a brief breakfast, and went to work, the pieces she'd so desperately sought freely tumbling away. She'd felt reborn recently, her mind a constant blazing whir, unchained following a long dormancy in which it had forgotten itself in darkness. A marathon she'd run after months-long training simply because she knew she could. Now her brain was moving on, seeking a new marathon, but ever-present work pierced a lung with cracked ribs. This just one of 1,000 excuses, she told herself. This just one of the 1,000 excuses she told herself. But in the moment, the thought had always ended there, with her never daring to engage with a second world-changing clause. The monkey in her ribs ever clattering the bones with anxiety was a third clause she'd also refused to link. Okay, then this last one is on my computer. Actually, I think I have two more. Begin with an extreme and see what happens. Closing his eyes, lying there in a nearly meditative state on the sweaty bench, Mark's sense of hearing seemed to sharpen. The clamor of various bars and weights being lifted and dropped, grunts and expelled breaths from strained bodies, and the squeak of sneakers all descended to the forefront of his mind, and he couldn't help but smile and feel at home. Mark inhaled 3 long, slow breaths, engaged his pectoralis muscles, took one more last breath, then poured all of his will into launching that damn barbell, loaded to a total of 150 pounds. He smoothly smashed out 10 repetitions, satisfied in knowing he could have cranked out at least 2 or 3 more. Thrilled, Mark jumped squarely off the bench, sweaty hair whipping his face, and nonchalantly tossed more plates onto the bar. 200 pounds it now weighed, and he'd need just a single rep only to surge past his previous PR of 190 pounds. Laying back down, Mark repeated his ritual, preparing for this last feat of strength, which was of especial significance. As he ripped his hands around the bar, the thoughts of Richard he'd been suppressing for the past year flooded back to him, and his arms fell to his side. He reset his grip, and despite stinging eyes and heaving chest, the bar did not move. That had been 2 days ago, the 1-year anniversary of his brother's passing. Now, Mark despaired in his bed, reminiscing about his brother, and shuffled through the Polaroids Rich loved to take. His gym bag sat empty below his nightstand. As he was beating himself up for skipping the gym and failing to raise those 200 pounds, he felt shame rising and purpling his cheeks. He hated himself for letting these trivialities distract him from fully appreciating the memories of his brother. He thought back to when Rich had convinced him after their entire adolescence of his urging to train at the gym together. Mark let a fleeting chuckle escape, recalling all his excuses. He didn't want to, or he enjoyed cardio more. He had even cited the locker room smell of the gym as, he had thought at the time, his most compelling argument. The chuckle turned into a cringing self-loathing, for he knew the truth that all these lousy excuses were masking the real reason. He was afraid. He was afraid of failure and afraid of the judgment of dozens of eyes laughing at his frail body. Rich's ghost appeared in Mark's mind's eye, but Mark physically batted it away. "I know," said the smallest bit of Mark's brain willing to engage with the message. To his surprise and embarrassment upon realizing how misguided his misgivings had been, Mark had loved their first gym session together. He remembered walking in the doors, looking up at his brother, who seemed to swell to a mountain of a man as soon as they entered the building. Rich commanded the room, hailing all the locals and greeting and receiving several head nods and high fives in return. Rich had shown him around the gym, pointing out the various machines and their exercises, but they circled back to 2. Even Rich hadn't been able to resist the allure of the bench press and the squat rack. Rich jumped onto an open bench and graciously hauled 200 pounds as if it were nothing. "Your turn," he'd said, and Mark's eyes went wide. On the drive home, Mark was a changed man. In an elixir of endorphins, he felt the thrill of adrenaline and confidence swirling in his blood. Rich was hollering, hyping, and dapping him up. That shared moment of pure brotherly love and adoration was the last thing Mark remembered before headlights blinded him. Mark swam in darkness, a syrupy ocean pulling him ever downward. When he finally surfaced, a realization more debilitating than any car crash instantly hit him. He'd woken up an only child. The warm presence, the connection he had always felt to his twin brother Rich, was gone. That one was the result of 3 days of writing. The first draft was kind of bad, I thought, so that's what it turned into. And then this last one is a very short little poem. It's from Ursula K. Le Guin's Steering the Craft. And the prompt was just to use onomatopoeia and alliteration and such. So here is that. Okay. Whoop, fainted and fell the fighter. Bang, bounced the body of the boxer. Ripped the whistle of the ref, but Ryan's mind did rest. Crowds crawling and cameras clicks, coaches cheering, raising fist, families' faces and fawning femmes, favored fight, fortune and fame, but Ryan's fate. Fixed? That was supposed to be more of narrative, but clearly that had turned into a bit of a poem, at least kind of aesthetically. So yeah, I didn't super follow the instructions on this, but that's what I got this week. Yeah, going well. Thank you for listening, as always.